Hello, everybody. This is Marshall Goldsmith. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. We're being put on by the Methods Network, a wonderful organization doing some great work, which is especially appropriate today, teaching people how to communicate in a time where we can't all be there face to face, where we have to communicate using new technology. An amazing job they're doing. And let me briefly introduce myself. We've got some wonderful people with me today to get started. My name is Marshall. I'm from a small town, Valley Station, Kentucky. Went to school in Indiana. I got a PhD at UCLA. I was a college professor and dean when I was young. And then for 43 years, I've done three predominant things. One, I travel all around the world speaking and teaching. Been to 102 countries, and on American Airlines alone have over 11 million frequent flyer miles. So I used to be a mega flyer. And the second thing I do is I coach executives. I've been the coach of the CEO of Ford and Pfizer and Blackstone and the World Bank and Walmart and the Mayo Clinic and on and on and on. And what I love about coaching is that's where I learn everything. And then I'm supposed to teach them, but in practice, they always teach me more than I teach them. Then the third thing I do is write and edit books and articles. I have written or edited 41 books, 6 bestsellers, 3 big bestsellers, and 35 purchased by my mother, my father, and relatives. So that's what I've been doing. And then also, I met a great woman named Aisha Bursell, and she said, "Who are your heroes?" My heroes were kind and generous people who were great teachers, and she said, "You ought to be more like them." I decided to adopt people, teach them all I know for free, and the only price is when they get old, they have to do the same thing. Pay it forward, give to others. And made a little video and put it on LinkedIn. I thought maybe 100 people would apply and I'd adopt 15. So far, 18,000 people have applied and I've adopted maybe 200, 250. So it's a wonderful project called 100 Coaches. And today we're being sponsored by that wonderful group. And we have 2 members of the group here today, and also Thinkers 50, the world's #1 organization for rating and management thinkers. And speaking of which, I have a co-host today, the wonderful Sanyin Siang. Sanyin is Thinkers 50, number one coach in the world. #1. Now, she maybe entered into the galactic contest, so she could be #1 in the whole galaxy. But for now, she's just #1 in the world, as far as I know. I used to be #1 in the world, but now I'm old. They put me in the Hall of Fame. So now Sanyin is #1 in the world. And also we have with us my wonderful, wonderful friend, Sandy Ogg. Now, let me introduce both of these people very briefly. Sanyin is in charge of the Coach K Center there at Duke. Fantastic woman, great author, teacher, coach, #1 Thinkers 50. And then my friend Sandy Ogg. Sandy and I, we've known each other forever since we were both little kids. Sandy is a great friend and a wonderful human being. Thank you for your service. He worked in the Coast Guard, did a lot of good, saved a few lives out there, which is wonderful. And then also he's been a corporate person. He worked for Motorola, where I worked with him. And then he worked for Unilever, and then finally at Blackstone, where he's running the people practice at Blackstone. And now he's got his own business, CEOWorks. And Sandy has come up with a brilliant idea. What's the definition of brilliant? The brilliant idea is when you hear it, you say, well, that just makes common sense, but no one thought of it. Well, he's come up with an idea that just makes common sense, but to the best of my knowledge, almost no one does it. So it's a fantastic idea. And Sandy's whole area of expertise is, this concept of matching talent to value. Now, Sandy, if you don't mind getting started, I'm going to ask you to spend a couple of minutes and give us the basics. It sounds like a basic idea, but I've worked in so many corporations, almost none have ever done this. Give me your concept of how do you talk about matching talent to value? Just a little of the background.
Yeah, well, Marshall, first of all, it's a real privilege to be with you and also with Sanyin, 2 people that I admire greatly. So what a privilege to have a chance to spend some time with you, and of course time with everyone else also. And talent to value is basically saying that when the world was flat and slow, organizations were designed and roles were designed within those organizations, and things were not moving around too much, and so people tended to be connected into a hierarchy, And then what they would tend to want to do with their, to advance their career was to move up and move up in the hierarchy, because that was the way to advance your career, to earn more money, and so on and so forth. And then the world started to move quickly, and the external rate of change went from, and we've been talking about change, you and I, Marshall, for 40 years. But change went from a linear to kind of an exponential, and things started to move much, much quicker. And that had an impact on the roles. And so what, job descriptions and what people were supposed to do every day was, these external changes were starting to impact things right at a single job. And so people would get disconnected. First of all, the roles would get disconnected because change would hit, value shifts, and when that value starts moving around, then money tends to follow it. And the next thing you know, you have people who are sitting in roles which are no longer connected to value. And so my thing was that when change hits, value shifts, money moves, and people don't, because they tend to be trapped in the hierarchy. And so what we need to do in order for organizations to perform better and for people to have more fun and fulfilling jobs is to connect talent back to value. And if we can then get talent and value realigned, then organizations perform better and people have more fun.
Sandy, that just makes 12 tons of sense. And, one of the things before I turn it over to Sanyin, by the way, is going to be my co-host on all of these shows moving forward. So thank you, Sanyin. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, one of the questions I was supposed to do, Sanyin, remember this, I always forget. I'm supposed to ask people, write down your questions for Sandy or any of us in the chat box. So when we get done, then we can answer your questions. I'm supposed to do that every show, but I keep forgetting. So Sanyin, you're going to be my co-host. So part of your job is to remind me what we're supposed to do here. So we're supposed to ask people if they have any questions. Well, Sandy, one thing before we get back to Sanyin, one thing I love about what you've done is you gave an example of some huge corporations where 50 people are largely responsible for a lot of the value creation in those companies, yet there was almost no connection between how they focused on hiring these people, how important they were, how much money they made, compared to the value they were creating for the company. And you came up with this incredibly radical idea of, if Mary over there is responsible for 60% of the value of the company, maybe we should treat her as if she's important, or pay her, or other things like that, which sounds like a statement of the ridiculously obvious, yet almost nobody does it. Can you just share that with people?
Yeah, well, I think that, Marshall, it's such a fundamental and important question, because if, and when you think about the way people are put into jobs, people are aspiring to become a vice president, or aspiring to become the head of research and development, or whatever it is. They're aspiring to roles, and these roles have, tend to be fit into an organization with a certain pay structure, and that pay structure is linked to the market. So what does the market pay for this particular job? Well, when you begin to think about connecting these roles to value, and now we can understand what is it that this role actually does produce. And then we can begin to think, instead of paying to the market, we can pay for value. And I think this is one of the things, having worked in a large corporation like Unilever versus working in a private equity firm like Blackstone. I think Blackstone and the private equity industry has understood that if you can create an alignment of incentives, where if what we want to do is to increase the value of the company, if we can get the people connected to value, and their pay connected to value, we have a better alignment of incentives. And so this makes, makes all the jobs and different things that people are doing, like I say, produce better results, and everybody has more fun.
Sandy, one thing you mentioned is I don't know if you can give me just some of the back to the details. It was a fantastic story about you had this one person who was really responsible for billions of dollars worth of value creation, and they quote promoted him and put him into a staff job where his role was reasonably meaningless when he was fantastic where he was, and how insane that was. Can you kind of share that sort of an example?
Yeah. I think, Marshall, we see this all the time. Is that, one example which is kind of fun is if you look at in many change programs or many transformations that people are going through, one of the things we discover that's a source of value is procurement. So if we can buy
Yeah.
things better, we can save money. And the money that we save, it creates value. And then when you look at, well, who's responsible for procurement? And you discover that the head of procurement is, reports to somebody who reports to somebody who reports to somebody who reports to the CEO. And so we may have someone who is sitting at, 4 or 5 layers down in the organization, and yet they're responsible for hundreds of millions of value. And so we could have a person who's in a role that is rated as a $60,000 job that is responsible for $600 million of value. And then when we begin to, you ask, well, who's responsible for that? Well, I don't think I know that person. Well, maybe it's important to get to know them. And the converse of that is, we are moving, people aspiring to go to a job which is higher up in the hierarchy. And, we do this with salespeople all the time. Brilliant sales person who's working on a major account. And in order for that person to earn more money, they have to get promoted to sales management. And they may not like sales management, and they may not be very good at it. And so we destroy value by taking them off the account and making them a manager.
Yeah, this is great. So, Sandy,
Yeah.
I just love what you do. It makes so much sense. And it is just not even thought of in so many companies. Sanyin, briefly introduce yourself and you ask Sandy the next question.
Hi, so I'm Sanyin Siang. I am the executive director of the Coach K Center on Leadership and Ethics, and I'm also a professor with the Duke University's Pratt School of Engineering. And Sandy, inherent in what you're talking about is that we've shifted from a complicated world to now a complex interwoven world where small levers can actually have major effects, right? So that person that is lower down in procurement can actually have major effects on the value creation. So my question for you is, right now, I mean, core to what you say is there's this beautiful dynamism, and in such a dynamism, it's affected by external forces. We've just been hit with a major change where that's forcing everyone to reimagine what their world will be like 2 years from now, what their company will be like 2 years from now. How do you see the role of reflection and really understanding what one values as applying to that value creation and inventing the company that will be prevailing in the future?
Yeah, well, Sanyin, first of all, you have a cool job, and I'm such a huge fan of what you do. I'm following you on on LinkedIn and seeing the very interesting things that you're doing, and I really appreciate you and what you do. And thank you for the question. I think that if we go back to this premise that change hits and value shifts. So here we are, and you look at most organizations and you look at their plans are up and to the right, up and to the right. Well, all of a sudden, change hits in the form of this COVID crisis, and value shifts, but it does not shift up and to the right. It shifts down pretty dramatically. And so it goes down, and then we're trying to all figure out, well, how long is it going to stay down, and when is it going to come back, And to what extent is it going to come back? And that shape of the area under the curve, is it a V? Is it a U? Is it a bathtub? Is it a W because we're going to open and close and open and close? And in that environment, when we talk about roles and people connecting themselves to value, now value is shifting around quite a bit. And so and in our organizations, we're having to think in 3 time horizons kind of all at once: 40 days, 4 months, and 4 years, because we want to be able to respond to the immediate crisis and see if we have an existential issue, or are we going to run out of cash? And then in the sort of 4-month time, well, when are we going to reopen, and are we prepared to reopen? And if we shut things down really hard, how easy is it going to be to reopen? And are we going to, sort of lose opportunity because we're not prepared? And then what opportunities are presented? If you think about all of us, the human imagination now coming out when change hits and value shifts, and you begin to see people making all kinds of interesting pivots. So we're in this really interesting time. So the whole point would be, none of us should ever let a crisis go to waste in terms of the kind of opportunities that it can provide for our companies, but also, more importantly, what it can mean for me. And what sort of an opportunity. So what pivot does this allow me? What pivot does it allow my organization? And so there's one thing which is think, gee, I'm scared. This is tough. And yes, it is tough. And my gosh, the human cost of this is unimaginable. But on the other hand, there are these amazing opportunities that are emerging, that we're seeing, kind of all over the place. I don't know if I can answer your question, Sandy.
Well, can we get tactical? That was awesome, Sandy. And the way you think about things is it's so insightful and innovative. And so, if we were to get tactical and think about, how do you even see, right? Because right now, when we're afraid, it's hard to really see the opportunities or even see the silver linings, or different trajectory. What are some of the actions or suggestions you have for helping our viewers be able to see and then imagine?
Yeah, it's such a fun question, and what I would say is, when people talk about value, they that sometimes it sounds like sort of an abstract concept, but it's basically where does our organization make money, or where does it make a contribution to society today? And when change hits, and then the value starts moving, or the places and the ways that we make money begin to move around. So what's going up? What are the up elevators? What's going down? What are the down elevators? Because when things are going up or things are going down, it's going to create opportunity. And so what we want to see is, well, if it's going up, what's going up? Or if it's going down, what's going down? And can I make a contribution? Can I connect my talent, my superpower? And when people talk about strengths, I think, we sort of moved from understanding what we're not so good at to really kind of get focused on what we are good at. And I think in today's world, in a real high rate of change world, we need to understand our superpower. And if we can match our superpower with one of these value opportunities, an up elevator or a down elevator, then, and you said, roll, talent, click. And when it clicks, boom, good things happen. And we've all experienced this, in our lives, where we either observe it in someone else or we observe it in ourselves. Roll, talent, click, boom. So that's what we're trying to create a boom.
Marshall, I think you're muted.
Wait a minute. Now, yeah, Sandy, now can you hear me? Yeah, Sandy, that's a great title for your next book. Click. I just talked to Mark Ryder, my book guy, right? He loves you and he loves that title, Click. So your next book, Click. We're advertising it right now. Click. You see a book called Click. You heard it here before it was even written. That's a great, great title. I love that title. Now, Justin, I'm sure we've got some wonderful, one comment and then questions. You know, Sandy, this matching talent to value, this applies to everyone on this call. I mean, you know, Sanyin has talent. I have some kind of talent. Hopefully you have talent. But we've had to change the way we match our talent to value because the definition of value out there is different than it was 6 months ago. So I think your comments apply not only to corporations, your comments apply to everyone on this call and our own lives. So I just love it. And now over here, Justin, do you have a good question for Sandy coming from the audience?
Hello, Marshall. It's Sarah MacArthur, not Justin, for today. Welcome, everyone. This is what a wonderful interview. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We have a question from Christina Imre, and she has a question for you, Sandy, which is, what's the most obvious trend you can see in talent development as a result of Corona?
Yeah, wow, that's a cool question. You know, I think that if you look at Corona, there are kind of three big energies. One is shutdown, and there people an opportunity to connect yourself to what happens in the shutdown, and so there's this immediate focus on cash and so on, and so therefore talent development, you know, becomes very, very short term, and we're focused on that. And then there's reopen, and there's a whole reopen energy that, you know, begins to emerge, and it's going to continue now for months. And there may be shutdown, reopen, shutdown, reopen. So, you know, there may be a W kind of energy in there, and so then how do I connect myself to that value? And then when you look at the new opportunities, I mean, there are so many new things that are going to emerge as a result of this crisis. You know, if you think about, like, you know, I was listening to, you know, someone who was working at a university, and they said, hey, for 20 years, we've been trying to get online education going. And then in 1 week, we pivoted the entire university to online in 1 week. Which had been talking about it for 20 years, but these circumstances create opportunities that never existed before. And so, and it's one thing to say, well, you know, talent development from the point of view of someone doing talent development to me. But there is the other thing, which is connecting, as Marshall was saying, connecting my own energy, my own talent to value. And I think part of it too is discovering your superpower. Because, you know, if you can understand what your superpower is and what you can bring, then, you know, and connect yourself to value in interesting ways. You know, and I would, you know, you got to say, you meet someone like Marshall and you say, wow, this guy has superpower, and he's not confused about what isn't his superpower, and he's very good about connecting himself to value. And you know, if you were to track the last 40 years of his career, you know, he has pivoted a number of times. So he hasn't been waiting around for someone to take responsibility for his life or his career. He's connected himself to value continuously. And, you know, hence 41 books and, you know, 6 bestsellers, 3 giant bestsellers. That's connecting yourself to value.
Thank you. Thank you. How about Justin? One more question, and then we'll wrap up.
All right.
Or
well,
Sarah,
it's not
Sarah,
it's still Sarah. Good to see
Still
you.
Sarah.
Still Sarah. So we had one other question, which is similar to the last one, Sandy, but it might help help the listeners a little bit, get a little more defined on what you do, which is, do we need to value talent differently during a crisis? Isn't talent like gold? that would remain gold regardless where you put it and in whatever situation? And this question is brought to us by Nitin Kumar.
Very good.
Very good.
Yeah. Great question. There's just no doubt that talent is always valuable. It's always valuable. The problem is we don't always have people connected to value. So there's waste when you have a superpower and we're only utilize a part of that person's superpower in the role that they're in right now. And so to the extent that when you have a crisis, the more we can understand the jobs to be done. If we can understand the jobs to be done, and I can understand how I connect to those jobs to be done, that's how we get this role, talent, click. Now we've got a click, and boom, these extraordinary results. And by the way, it's essential in a crisis. When we go into shutdown, if we understand a very focused set of jobs to be done, and we can get the right talent on it, click, boom, and same way when we get into reopen, you begin to think about, we had to shut down all the schools. Now we need to open all the schools back up. What are the jobs to be done in reopen? They're different. And you may have the same role. The people were doing one thing in shutdown, another thing in reopen, another thing in reimagining the company. And different jobs to be done. I can connect myself to value. And by the way, there's no time to be pulling people out and put other people in a crisis. You have to go with what you got. You got to go with what you got. And I'm in a number of the private equity organizations where I'm working. They say, well, gee, this particular CEO is really good in this situation or not good in that situation. But in the crisis, we're not changing that person. We're looking at the jobs to be done, and we're saying, what is it that we're going to do? And you begin to complement. You begin to do. There's all kinds of strategies that we can use in that in order to. But we're not confused. The value in a shutdown is focused on cash. The value in the reopen, is a different focus. In reimagine the company is a different focus. And how do I connect myself with that?
Well, finally, I just want to say, Sandy, thank you so much. We'd love to have you come back and join us again. You've got so much good stuff. You get so much good. That we'll never get all of it in one short talk. Sanyin, thank you so much for being my co-host. I'm very honored to be with you, to be with Sandy. What a couple of great human beings. Both members of our wonderful 100 Coaches organization, which is filled with just amazing and fantastic and wonderful people. So thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sanyin. Sandy, please come back and visit us again if you get a chance. Sanyin, looking forward to working with you. And pretty soon I'll delegate to you, since you're #1 leadership coach in the world. You can carry this ball. So thank you. Thank you, Sanyin. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everybody. And as with all of our calls, our mission is just try to help you have a little better life here. We're going to give you a bunch of ideas. Whatever works for you, use it. If it doesn't work for you, take a deep breath and let it go. By the way, my email is marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. If we tell you something that's helpful and useful, helps you have a better life, let me know about it. If you think it sucks, keep it to yourself. Thank you very much.